Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. I apologize if the audio quality is not very good this week. I'm currently going through the Strait of Hormuz in a shipping container with some Assad agents, so there may potentially be some background noise. You'll have to forgive me. This week I want to talk to you guys about Chris Bumstead and whether or not he would survive the post-apocalyptic wasteland. Now, if you don't know who Chris Bumstead is, he's the 6-time Mr. Olympia winner of the classic physique division, and he's probably one of the most successful and well-recognized bodybuilders on the planet right now. And so a couple of months ago, he posted a video of him doing some strength movements and seeing where he was at with his ability to sprint. I was particularly curious about how he would handle the run, because it's very common for a big jack guy to not run for a long time because they're focused on being as jacked as possible, and then they, for whatever reason, try to sprint one day and then they end up tearing a hamstring or something like that. I've seen it at least a dozen times, and so I kind of anticipated early in the video that he might have some type of issue, and he ended up having some minor tweak in his quad. It wasn't necessarily anything that catastrophic. It was big enough for him to have to stop running and kind of move on to the next thing, but as far as I can tell, he's perfectly fine and he's training normally. So it wasn't a big deal, but to have a guy this strong and this athletic not be able to run a couple of sprints, I think speaks to a very important principle that you guys need to understand. Now, a lot of people will see something like this and they'll say, look, see how unfunctional bodybuilding training is? You shouldn't be doing bodybuilding style workouts because then you can't even run. But what you have to understand is Chris doesn't have a problem running because he was doing bodybuilding. He has a problem running because he hasn't been running. And that's perfectly understandable because he's been trying to be the best bodybuilder on the planet in his division for the past however many years, and running is not really going to help him do that. Running is a good form of cardio, but when you're trying to be as big and as jacked as possible and you're pushing as hard as you are in the gym, especially closer to a show time when you're dieting down to single-digit body fat for multiple weeks on end, running is a very, very difficult and taxing way to get in your cardio. And so he's not going to necessarily go to running even if he wants to, because it just takes too much time, it takes too much effort. He's going to probably pick something that's a little less stressful but still allows him to get his heart rate up and burn calories and lean out, like a stationary bike or an elliptical machine or something like that. So that knee-jerk reaction that a lot of people have to say, oh, well, see, bodybuilding training isn't functional, or he's a bad athlete, all of those takes are not correct, because he's not trying to be the best runner he can be. He's trying to be the best bodybuilder he can be. And there's nothing wrong with doing leg extensions and bicep curls. It's just that if you do those and never ever run, then obviously you're not going to be good at running. Your body's not going to have the work capacity to run, especially to run quickly. And so this is a great example of the idea of use it or lose it. If Chris doesn't run for a decade, even though you can see later in the video he's very, very strong, he does what I think is like a 600 plus pound deadlift, he does some vertical jumps where he's very explosive, he has a lot of athleticism, but he just hasn't been running. And so to jump in to a relatively high intensity run like a sprint, his body just doesn't have that work capacity yet. It's the use it or lose it principle. And so what you guys can take from this is, even if you're maybe in a period of your life where you're really busy and training has really taken a back seat, it's extremely valuable to get in at least one run a week, maybe 10, 15 minutes at the most, but just consistently get that run in. Keep the legs and the hamstrings and the quads and the knees and the ankles and the Achilles, all these different body parts that are involved in the run, keep them in shape. Keep the work capacity there. It doesn't take nearly as much work to maintain a physical quality and a certain level of fitness as it does to develop it. And so if you just do a little tiny bit of running each week, you can maintain a lot of your fitness and ability to do that activity, as opposed to just, oh, well, I'm too busy at work, or right now I really want to focus on getting my squat numbers up, so I'm just not going to run at all. If you want to be a prepared guy, a guy, especially for you cops, firefighters, but if you're a tactical guy and you're worried about worst case scenarios and stuff like that, you gotta at least maintain the running. I have some guys who they end up going for a run like once a week because they miss once every other week, because they miss a workout and then they have to catch up, and they end up only running like once every other week, but they're way better off than not running at all for 6 months to a year. And so that use it or lose it principle is very, very real. And a lot of people have this false impression that if they can't focus on something and push it really hard, whether it's running or lifting, then they may as well not do it at all. That's not true. That couldn't be farther from the truth, especially if you want to be this physically prepared guy or girl. You need to at least have a maintenance level of running in your program, especially if you don't like to run. And what will end up happening is, if you run and you maintain the physical ability to do so in the work capacity, when your schedule lightens up and work isn't so crazy, or when your training focus shifts and you do want to return to pushing, running a lot harder, you have a little bit of a base to work off of, as opposed to just starting totally from scratch. And when you start from scratch, it's important to note the likelihood that you're going to injure yourself is a lot higher, because the risk of you going past your body's capability is that much higher, because there's no fitness developed in that thing that you're trying to do. So even though a guy like Chris probably has little to no interest in running, and certainly during his Olympia career, running was not going to be something that really helped him out a ton, I'm always curious, how much better off would he be physically if he had just done a run once a week? Would that have taken away from his ability significantly to be Mr. Olympia? Maybe not super close to a show, but when he's far out from a bodybuilding show, he's got the calories to spare. Going for a 15-minute run once a week, would that have provided him with some benefit enough to be able to come back into sprinting after his retirement and be able to sprint safely and consistently? I don't really know for sure. There's a lot of variables at play, but it's just something interesting to think about. But what we do know for sure is that if you take long periods of time off where you're doing nothing in a certain task, you're going to lose the ability to do that task. And if you want to be a physically prepared guy, you just can't afford to do that. And it's not really needful that you do that in 99% of cases. You can just do, like I said, a very minimal maintenance level of running and maintain a lot of the ability. You can do a couple of sprints, and then you can go for a 10-15 minute run. Boom, you're done. It's been 20 minutes, a half hour. And you do that once a week, and you're going to be much better off in the long run. So to answer the question, would Chris survive the post-apocalyptic wasteland? Probably not if he can't run. We know running is really important to survival in that type of scenario, but he's such a good athlete. I'm sure if he dedicated 3 to 6 weeks to really focusing on running, he'd get that ability up and he'd be just fine. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.